Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Man, do I have a great tech story to share with you all today, because Creator Plus co-founder Ben Grubbs, who was the former head of global creator partnerships at YouTube and founder of Next 10 Ventures, the first fund to solely invest in creator businesses, is going to join me on the show today. Built from the ground up with community and better economics in mind, the studio team, based in Culver City, has more than 100 films under their belt and includes prominent industry executives such as Adam Wescott, head of content studios, Ben O'Keefe, head of diversity and impact, Nick Phillips, head of production, and McKenna Marshall, director of development. And unlike ad-supported and subscription-based models, the whole concept is to allow more creative control through an end-to-end platform that provides everything a passionate storyteller needs to take IP to feature-length movies, from financing and production to marketing and distribution. And now, with the creator economy being one of the fastest growing sectors in technology and entertainment today, especially with the seismic explosion of digital video consumption driven by Gen Z and Gen Alpha audiences, I felt compelled to find out more. But enough from me. Buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to LA, where Ben is waiting to share his story and the story behind Creator Plus. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
I'm Ben Grubbs. I'm the co-founder of Creator Plus. I've had a long career in media and tech. Spent the first 15 years of my career living and working in Asia, 8 of those years in Singapore and 7 in Hong Kong. Then I've been back in the US for the last 5.5 years. Through the Asia journey, spent time working for companies like Yahoo, eBay, Turner Broadcasting when it was part of Time Warner, and then Google. And then I spun out of Google in early 2018 to start a venture group called Next 10 Ventures that's focused on the creator ecosystem, both having a hand in ideation incubation of new startups and also investing in early stage companies, a mix of enterprise and consumer-based companies.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there, isn't there? They've got the tech career, media, traveling in Asia, Google. So before we dive into what you're doing now, I've got to ask, can you share your origin story and what was it that where your passion for technology come from and how those worlds of media and technology collided, and ultimately what problems did you set out to solve?
Was born in San Francisco, grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, youngest of six boys. So pretty active household. I got access to computers and technology at a pretty young age through my dad, and started tinkering, kind of building websites when I was in actually college. So this is in the late 90s. But yeah, so early days, just getting online through services like Prodigy, CompuServe, America Online. Then there was the World Wide Web, and like leaving the confines of AOL and go into places like Yahoo, which then it was interesting. Then later working there, so I think from my childhood, I think maybe afforded by having 5 older brothers to watch and observe and see kind of what they were doing and maybe what they weren't doing. So I was always kind of interested in things that they actually weren't doing. So when they went to school in California, I thought, I'll leave this state. And so I went to school in New York. When they all did semesters abroad or spent some time kind of traveling in Europe, I said, well, I'll do the study abroad in Asia, which is actually what brought me to Singapore. And I think, there's an early fascination with media and journalism, kind of got that bug. And when I was in middle school, around the age of maybe 12. And so got involved in the school newspaper, started the school radio station. And then when I was in high school, continued to kind of work in the newsroom for the Alabama newspaper group. So writing feature stories. And in the summer, was working on the city desk. So getting assigned stories every day that I had to then file by deadline. Did some reporting on KMBR radio in San Francisco, high school sports reports, and then did as a segment producer, writing, editing my senior year for a live sports television show on KSCU TV in San Jose. I think what else I was actually up to around that time, but I was just trying different mediums. During college, continued to kind of do radio reporting for an NPR affiliate, doing political news reporting in upstate New York. Worked on a magazine startup, did some work for assisting production company that was producing shows for cable television. And, through all this, I was just trying to see after school, which of these fields I actually want to dive into. And the internet was intriguing to me because at that time, no one could actually claim to have 10 years of experience in like consumer internet companies because they weren't even that old. And I was, a young, impatient person. And so I didn't really find it too interesting to kind of go and just be, a grunt and kind of work some menial job kind of right out of school. And so what I was, thinking through was like, if I was to pursue a journalism media career, it would be that process of kind of working your way up, maybe over a 10, 15 year time frame. And whereas with the internet, I felt like, well, there's a lot of people that just again don't have that experience. So we're all in it together and kind of learning together. So that's what was attracting me. And then I think mixed with that idea of a journey kind of abroad and then to Asia. So I spent a summer between my junior and senior year of school in Singapore and had an internship with Yahoo. And with the intention that I was just make a mark, get a good recommendation, go back, finish my senior year, and then maybe come back to the Bay Area and go work in tech for a company like Yahoo. And then at the end of that summer, I think made a positive impression with the general manager and continued to have a dialogue in that fall about me coming back actually in January. So accelerating my senior year. And that's what I did. So I came back first week of Jan 2001 to then head up at what was at the time actually a new business unit focused on video streaming. So Yahoo bought broadcast.com, Mark Cuban and Todd Wagner's company in 99. So I was part of the team that was actually bringing that into international markets. So I was responsible for Southeast Asia and then also supporting India and Australia, New Zealand. So I thought it was kind of crazy. I was actually getting this opportunity straight out of school. Yeah. I was going to say yes before they actually, took that back. And I told my mom, I'll be over there for a year, then I'll come back. I went over there with 2 bags and came back 15 years later with a wife and 3 kids.
Wow, man, what an amazing story. And listening to the early part of it there reminded me of the days, remember where every magazine you picked up had an AOL CD, a CompuServe CD and a Netscape Navigator CD. And then there was that sound of the 56K modem connecting. It was quite a magical time, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, and I think also that time too, and actually trying to actually build a video business and then in Asia where it was still dial up, maybe some not even 56K, it was like 28 and wow. 28K in some of these markets. And then 128 was broadband. And so, in the video output, it looks great. And then you look at the other end in terms of what the consumer is kind of getting. I was like, this is actually not so great. So it was more of an enterprise focus than it was consumer. The consumer market really wasn't there yet. But I think a lot of companies were actually looking at how to use online video for conferences, seminars. And 2003, when SARS hit and travel shut down, that was boom time actually for the business. And, I had a deja vu moment last year with COVID, as this was surging, but, now in 2020, you had much better infrastructure and tech and lots more startups kind of pursuing the space. But it was an area that, it was fun kind of getting people online for the first time, to experience kind of watching video online for the first time. And then that was kind of a thread kind of throughout other companies I worked at. At eBay was, getting people to buy online for the first time or sell online for the first time. And then when I was at Turner, we spent a lot of time in gaming. So it was actually introducing people into stories and entertainment through gameplay and multiplayer gameplay. And then when I came back to when it came to Google, then with YouTube, it was also again getting a younger kind of segment of the market in parts of Asia to experience kind of watching video, on their phone for the first time and have that actually be an enjoyable experience. So that's, I think, actually what kept me out in the region so long was there's always something new and unexplored kind of terrain. And so I enjoyed kind of working for American media and tech companies, and then kind of being the guy in the region to adapt and localize this core kind of product. And then it was also seeing kind of over time how there's just a lot of innovation actually occurring kind of in the Asia region and also in some of their international markets that was actually, I thought, years ahead of actually the US. So when I came back to the States, I spent a lot of time actually kind of working with US colleagues and other folks that are in global roles actually around how to look at like pockets of innovation, from all corners. And it's not that it all just comes out of Silicon Valley. So yeah, it was it's been a fun journey. And I think taking a lot of those experiences and applying it into companies like Creator Plus, and I'm working on now, is kind of been the path.
Yeah, and if we fast forward to present day, of course, that path did lead you to Creator Plus. But I've got to ask, what's the story behind the company, and what problems did you set out to solve from the beginning?
So I think I had spent, over the last decade, working with and supporting creators that were using, digital platforms to kind of create new IP, to tell stories, to kind of build an audience in a community. So I had experienced that actually when I was at Turner, and I experienced that in full effect kind of when I was at YouTube. And actually, I'll go back a little bit. Like when I was at eBay, it was the first time I'd actually experienced seeing young entrepreneurs kind of build a brand and a business and a community on top of a kind of tech platform. And so our power sellers actually in Asia at that time were young, like 18 to 24-year-olds, like folks coming out of their college dorm room that within a year, had millions of dollars in sales and were employing dozens of people. So to eBay, it was like one account. Then when you look at what's behind that, it was like, wow, this is a whole operation. It's just like very young, scrappy, savvy, entrepreneurs. And at Turner, I had the good fortune to kind of work with some creatives that were developing new IP and actually using the internet as a way to incubate that. And so I had that kind of appreciation. Then when I came into YouTube, I was having this, I was seeing this mixture of that entrepreneur that I had worked with actually at eBay, and then this like real creative that I actually worked with at Turner. And, my role initially was actually to market and grow the YouTube platform across the Asia region, focus on the supply side. So getting more creators actually kind of coming in. And from that, it's like, well, I need to understand, like, why do we even have the creators that we have right now to begin with? Like, why were they coming here? And back then, it wasn't, as simple as just saying everyone's seeking fame and fortune. There are a lot of folks, actually, this is back in 2012. There are a lot of folks actually in the region that had no notion that you could even make revenue actually on YouTube. They didn't know that there was a partner program, and their 55% of the ad revenue was actually could flow through to them. So they were solving different problems just around like, making videos and wanting to share that with friends and family and needing the easy way to share the file. And so YouTube was offering free hosting and easy way to kind of go and view. So they started that way, and then other people were discovering their content and then commenting and suggesting, that they add more to that. And so I saw this kind of again and again when I was looking at like the origin story of these folks. It was kind of accidental. And I think this is quite different today. I think where there's a clear notion of the business opportunity that's afforded to you actually in kind of building some of these online communities. So what I was then seeing is that there's people showing up for different reasons, and they're not all the same. And I was seeing that there's some that are really driven by a creative passion and telling stories. And a platform like YouTube was kind of enticing to them because there was no gatekeeper. It was just, it's up to you and your effort and your ambition, and you put it out. There's others that were more business minded than that entrepreneur. There were some that I was meeting that were really there to kind of produce education content. They wanted to engage and enrich and inspire. Some just wanted to inform. Again, in the Asia region, you had a lot of state-run media and news. And so if you want a different kind of viewpoint of what's going on in the market, you're actually finding that on YouTube. And then there's others that just, I think, realized over time that having a social graph and some followers, you get paid for that. So the promoters. And the first group, actually, it was the first three that intrigued me more than I'd say probably the last two. And I think on the first one, I would get drawn in by people and their passions. And they would tell me about like some of their real motivation, desire, some would say, is to be a filmmaker. And YouTube is just a stepping stone to that end goal. Or some had, passion projects, but they weren't pursuing it. So I was curious, like, why? And so what is the roadblock that you actually have? And I kind of took that as a creative challenge. And I was like, if I can help you tackle some of those obstacles, are we then saying we can go forward and actually go produce this passion project of yours? And they would say, yeah, sure. If you have some way to actually go off and do it. I'm thinking like, yeah, in Google, there is this notion of like 20% time. So my 20% time was always like pet projects with creators. And I would just float from, across different people. And, I think there was this thing sometimes of like, I think I got asked this once, and I know some other people on my team got asked this of like, who do you work for? And this was coming from other colleagues, and they're like, do you work for Google or do you actually work for these creators? Because I think we were just so deep into, who they are, what they're doing, the journey that they're on, and we would just get drawn into that. And then, yes, you do need to kind of step back at times, think like, okay, we're working for a much larger kind of company and platform. You have platform goals and objectives. So I think that was like some of the beginning of that. And that part always kind of intrigued me. So then when I would kind of hear folks around, that desire into kind of longer form content, it was like, oh, I'd love to see how I can actually help you on that path. One other quick thing is, when I was still in Asia, I was part of the team that got to launch YouTube Kids. And so new product, and there was budget actually allocated for original content for the US launch. But no one ever said at that first meeting that where the content actually had to come from. So I went back from that offsite, and I went to my team in Asia, and I said, guys, it's game on. The quicker we are to go and shape original programs and content, the more of that budget that we can go win for our creator partners. And, again, I had come from Turner. They have Cartoon Network, produce a lot of original content. And my view at the time was like, I'm not actually that interested to go work with my ex-colleagues. They can sort themselves out. I was more interested in actually leaning into some of these creators that were producing kids content on YouTube. And that's the only place that they were actually making content. And the easiest way at that time to kind of get in was do royalty-free nursery rhymes, right? Because some parent is just going to search Humpty Dumpty or Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars. And it was this like SEO game of like, let me get to the top of the search results. And some creators are actually buying AdWords to then boost their link. So it was the first thing that you're actually watching. And they found that, yeah, I'm buying a view, but I'm getting 4 to 5 organic views, after that. So it was a profitable way to kind of grow audience. But then you have some of these folks that have these channels and content with billions of views. And there was a creator in Brazil, Juliano, who's got this channel, Galinha Pitadinha, or JukeTube is actually the channel ID, but Galinha Pitadinha is the IP, and it's Portuguese nursery rhymes that parents in Brazil had, they passed down from generation to generation. And so they were kind of saying that, like, if you're a young mother and you want to put your kid in front of, stories, do you want it to be stuff from America, or do you want it to be stuff that's actually local and culturally relevant? So they were kind of betting that the mothers there would choose the local content. So that's what Galinha Pitadinha, how that kind of started. And in the IP, they actually have this blue chicken called Lati Tati. And so the channel, I think today, doesn't even have more than like 50 videos. This is after like a decade. Yeah. And so it's a very small number of uploads, but the consumption is incredibly high. And the thing I was learning there was they actually did a market study on brand awareness, and the awareness actually for the blue chicken was surpassing Disney IP and other kind of major media company IP. And this is back in like 2014. So then there were parents and kids actually clamoring for a consumer product of this blue chicken. And so coming back to it, I was kind of seeing that like there's things that are actually kind of resonating. So I was going back to some of these guys in Asia and saying, that the characters that you put in your video, you've never told the story of like who they are. They're always appearing in these songs that are nursery rhyme songs that are very well known. But how about actually working and investing into kind of character development and story development? And so if I could actually pair you up with like award-winning writers who are writing, for preschool shows, and they could bring their skill set to the table, and you have your skill set, and then maybe if I'm going to put some more budget against this, like you've been doing the animation yourself, but if I can get you paired up with an animation studio, and it's just this mixture here, is that something that would actually interest you? And they were like, that would be fantastic. I'm going to learn and grow from this whole process. So that's what we did. We ended up producing over half a dozen original shows. They've done like north of 2 billion views on the platform, and really built kind of brand and IP. So that experience is pretty formative for me of just kind of seeing there is motivation and desire, but then there's this thing of like, well, I haven't done it before, so I don't know what I don't know. But if you can kind of come in and actually work with me and fill out some of those gaps, we can go create something great together. So coming back then, when I moved here, then I was interfacing a lot with, a broad set of creators and not just folks actually producing kids content. And again, from time to time, I would come across folks that, express this desire into filmmaking or telling a story that's just not confined in a 60-second kind of format or an 8-minute long video. And in some ways, they're already making episodic content on a platform like YouTube. And so then to get more funding for more episodic content is kind of more of the same. But then there's certain stories that you can maybe say are best kind of told in that feature length kind of form. So the thing it's like, well, where do you go with that? And who do you go work with? And who do you work with? And the thing I was kind of finding here in the States at the time was, the term influencer was grown in prominence, and it was kind of getting conflated, I thought, with creators that I had known and worked with at YouTube. And I kind of see influencers really as like the promoters. And there's a lot of people who actually have influence, but a politician, an athlete, you call them a politician or an athlete, not an influencer who also happens to be in elected office or play professional basketball. And so I was like, well, just to label some of these folks that I had the good fortune to work with at YouTube as influencers, I thought was like demeaning and diminishing actually a lot of the creative capabilities that they actually have. So it was like how to kind of bring that up and help, shape that. So that was the thing that just like stuck with me for a bit. And then I think last year, with the pandemic and theaters kind of closing, and I have young kids, 7, 9, and 12 years old, and they love watching movies. And we come, it's like, hey, we're not going out to the cinema, but they're still kind of asking like, hey, what's the new film we get to go watch this weekend, but at home. And then it was like they're celebrities, the people that actually know from these platforms. And so it's a conversation of like, well, if they were to actually have something that was a feature film, is that something that you would be quite interested in? It's like, wait, is it out? Does it exist? And it's like, no, hypothetical. And from that side. So I think it was just a mixture of things kind of last year, where it seemed to be kind of an opening. And, as I was talking with some folks in the market, before I think the pandemic, if I ever brought this whole topic up, it would have been like, oh yeah, you should just go make films and then put them in cinemas, and then they can just promote, to their community and social graph to drive people into cinema. And I'm thinking like, no, I think the better way to go is just direct to consumer and online, and what I had experienced when I was at eBay, and just how you can close the loop, from engagement to transaction all online. And I think the thing with a lot of the creators is that they build these big kind of social graphs and followings on other platforms that they don't own. It's all rented. And, different platforms have recommendation engines and algorithms that then determine like to what extent can you even reach the people that you've already put a lot of time and effort into actually acquiring in the first place. So it was like, what if we actually had a different way of actually also having a tech platform that could actually acquire and a team and resource and with the product could actually do a job in retaining that audience and customer base, and mix that actually with a team that actually could has the resource to spend time and effort in the development process, right? And taking folks that are already showing up with incredible talent and capabilities, but there's other things that they haven't yet done. And so just because they haven't done it yet, it's not that they can't do it, but it's like, okay, well, this is then a company to exist to further them along actually on that journey. So, it was like, okay, then there should be a content studio and a tech platform. And it's not just one, but the combination, I think, is actually where the real kind of power comes through. And so I then was interested in like building this, with someone who actually has a strong kind of tech background and product management kind of experience. And that's where I also had the good fortune of meeting Jonathan last year. And we started talking about this marketing environment and what this like new company, could be. We met through Google Meet, through video. He's up north in San Francisco. I'm in LA. So we spent several months actually getting to know one another, talking about our values and our views of, the market, and actually kind of, working with creators and supporting creators, and what this like construction of the company should actually kind of be. And then it was like, all right, I think we got something there. And we were both like, I think, just exciting one another. And it's like, let's go do this. And so that was the long answer to some of the origin of how we kind of got to where we got to.
I love that. Such a powerful story again. And for a lot of people listening, I think they'll hear about Creator Plus for the first time and take in immediately a new film studio and streaming platform for digital first storytellers. It's going to tick a lot of boxes for a lot of people and businesses. But do you have any other use cases that you could share that would just help listeners understand how it might work in their world and how they might be able to leverage your technology there?
Well, I mean, I think that, so there's, I think the use case of people kind of actually watching films has been going on for a century. So that's not new. I think the idea of actually kind of getting drawn into, characters and story and IP, and in some cases where that IP can actually form, a franchise, and that actually extends, beyond the primary product, if that's the film itself. That's already kind of been in existence. But I think what Jonathan and I have been thinking a lot about is by actually having a kind of strong kind of tech mindset and a focus actually for the company, and actually what we're trying to build with the product and the platform, is how can we bring together the content and the content experience and do things actually around kind of community and engagement and commerce, and all in one kind of holistic product platform user experience. Where I think today I go one place to actually go consume and watch. I go another place to actually kind of engage with the community around that IP that I watch. I was over here kind of watching that. Yeah. And then if I actually ever want to go and transact and buy something even related to that IP, I got to go to a different place. Right. So there's this fragmentation that's kind of there. And so we were kind of looking at this as like, what if there is an effort really to kind of bring this together from the get-go? It is one thing. So I think that's, I think just taking things that we know have pre-existed us, but looking at just a different way of going about this. I think then the other part is that, there are a lot of creators actually that, again, are using kind of digital platforms to engage, to entertain, to kind of tell stories. And I think people are, following them on platforms like YouTube and subscribing to their channel because they enjoy actually the content that they're serving. And, there's been cases in the past where, creators actually want to do more, but it costs more money for production. And, I think in the time that I was actually at Google, what I was watching was in, the 2012 kind of time frame, there were folks that were actually making content And, if they can get sponsored by a brand, they were kind of hiding the fact that actually the brand was sponsoring them. They had this fear of being seen to be selling out to a brand, to a brand or a marketing organization, which is interesting. And we've, I think, come past that. Then it was a hesitation actually around, pushing product and for someone to actually sell, or even developing their own product, on that front. So it was like, I don't want to commercialize my audience. And I think like every 2 to 3 years, there seems to be kind of like a new cohort or generation kind of coming into online kind of video ecosystem. And, these are folks who have been growing up watching people before them, but they don't actually have the same kind of hangups or viewpoints of like what you can and can't do. And so I've just seen over time, there's been a broader kind of acceptance or even adoption around actually making content and monetizing that in multiple ways. And to this exchange where the audience base is saying, love what you do, I want to support what you do. And I know in certain things that you're doing are frankly going to cost more money. But I'm going to show up and I'm going to support you kind of on that. And so there is this acceptance actually in exchange. And I see this, with some creators actually just around apparel and merchandise, that, there's a direct call out to purchase the merchandise, because the purchase, the sales volume there is then reinvested back into the content. And so I think what we were also kind of looking at was, well, how not to have the video and the stories there kind of be the secondary thing, but actually how to treat that in a premium form and put that actually out into the market on a transactional basis. Just like you go to the cinema to transact and actually watch a film, you can actually also do that kind of online. And now you can wrap that actually around a holistic experience with community and other kind of commerce, but it's not so much of like the main kind of product actually needs to be a loss leader. And it's actually where you're having all this monetization is actually in this secondary, product. So again, I think we were just, observing kind of how things have evolved, in this space over the last decade, and the mindset and the viewpoints of some of the creators and their desires, and looking at actually, we had this lucky position of creating a company from scratch. We have no preceding things that we have to adhere to or kind of protect. But it's like, okay, if we're going to try to be creator first, then okay, we can go have a platform where we're saying any of the members and the customers that are actually coming through around these films are going to be co-owned actually by the creators that we're partnering with. We can then put together a revenue share model that shares equally on the back end across all forms of monetization. And so we were like, let's just set these principles up from the start. And as then we're talking with investors that back the company, they know full well what they're kind of backing, and that we don't want to move away from that. Like, this is actually where we're starting.
And you guys have been incredibly busy as well. I believe you've had a $12 million in a venture-backed financing round that includes prominent creators, technology founders, and industry execs. And I also read before coming on to speak with you today that Creator Plus also recently announced its first feature-length film entitled Jane, starring Riverdale, a star from Riverdale, which is slated for release next year. But can you expand on that for me? Because it sounds like an incredibly exciting time for you guys now.
So yeah, I think the fundraising process, like a lot of things during the pandemic, was all done virtually. Maybe some benefit of that, not having to actually hop around the globe. And so we were fortunate to have folks like the PETRA group, which is based in Southeast Asia, and Freestyle Capital, which is based here in the US, go and lead the financing round. But then there was complemented by a host of industry executives and creators, come from markets like India, other parts of Southeast Asia, Hong Kong, Africa, UK, and parts of North America. And so I think that was important to Jonathan and I to actually have kind of global backing from the get-go, because our aspiration is to take Creator Plus on a global level. Yeah. And I think given the bulk of my career actually kind of spent working and living outside the US, that's just a given kind of on my end. as I kind of look at things that I'm working on. And so I think actually having that support, from the start was actually important to both of us. And we're pleased to kind of see that support kind of come in. So that's on that front. And I think in terms of the slate development, so we're looking to have 6 films actually released in 2022. The first that we announced last week is a film called Jane, which is a young adult psychological thriller. Stars Madeline Petch, and she's also producing, and it includes Melissa Leo, who won a Best Supporting Actress Oscar for The Fighter. Chloe Bailey, who's been managed by Beyonce's music group, and she and her sister have been nominated multiple times for Grammys. And so it's I think a fascinating kind of mixture, folks actually on the front of the camera, and then the director of the film. It's her first time actually directing a feature, and so I think going back to things I was talking about before is, I think this notion of like, well, because you haven't done it before doesn't mean you can't do it. I think it's affording this opportunity to create a canvas, I think, for people to to work with us and actually kind of shape new things together. And so I think with Jane, I think what's been great kind of out of the gate is just showing the mixture of talent, both behind the camera and in front of the camera, that we're bringing together, and with folks that actually have an exceptionally large fan base and community across multiple platforms, of which we're going to be able to partner and engage, as we bring this film to market in early 2022.
Absolutely love that. And listening to you there, do you think it's with Jonathan's experience building and scaling startups combined with your background in developing and investing in creators, it almost feels like your skills complement each other perfectly? So is that combination of skills and experience that is ultimately your secret sauce, would you say? Is that what separates you?
It's been a great kind of past year working with Jonathan, and I think he has a lot. I mean, I think there is a lot of compliments. I spent the bulk of my career kind of working in large tech and media organizations, and again, a lot of that actually working overseas. And he's had a long career actually working in startups, and actually in most of the startups that he's actually been involved in have actually had positive exits. So there's been a lot of successes actually in that journey. But I think then where we have similarities is actually, well, the companies I was working in, the roles I was taking were things where there was something new. So it was launching a new business unit, helping to launch a new market, bring new kind of products to market, but within the overall kind of umbrella of a larger kind of organization. And so I think with Creator Plus, we're looking at actually how we kind of pull from our collective 20 plus years of work experience in a lot of different companies and the cultures and the organizations, and then how we're kind of setting that foundation for Creator Plus. I think that's partly it's been attractive to the team that we've been able to kind of assemble, some of which were actually committing to us before we even closed the financing round. When they saw what we were kind of building and the journey that we're embarking on, they said that they wanted to be a part of that, and we're making that commitment again before the cash was actually in the bank. So that was extremely validating, to us, to actually have some really top talent, across both product engineering and content to make that commitment to us. And for me, it's I don't have that long history in product management. And so it's been a joy kind of, partnering with Jonathan and learning from him, again, about like the construction of product and engineering kind of organizations and the process there. And then, I think on my end, it's, more time kind of spent in content kind of business and marketing roles and how we're trying to thread that together and not be kind of it's a small team. And so it's like, how is this like a, one kind of cohesive unit And I think what we've seen already kind of to date is there's a lot of interaction and exchange actually across, areas from product and engineering to content. And it's not like products over here and it's doing its thing and content's over there and they're doing their thing. It's they are, jamming daily in terms of actually how they're, planning on what they're building and how that's all going to come to market early next year.
So you have your big goal is to have 6 films slated for release early 2022. But I'm curious, where do you go from there? What's your grand vision for Creative Plus? Is there anything you can share around that?
Grand vision, I guess it would be the thing that Jonathan and I have talked about is, this is a kind of grand ambition, but it's like, how could Creative Plus get to a point where it's actually spawning an ecosystem? Yeah. Now, I've had the good fortune of working in 2 companies that I think have done that. They've been kind of platforms that have actually spawned an ecosystem, and there's been a whole host of third-party companies that actually tie into that and support the core. And so that is, I think, grand and ambitious, for us in this young stage. But that is something that we've genuinely kind of felt like it would be remarkable if we could even. If we can approach that stage. And what it then kind of, I think, represents is then we're creating a foundation that's affording more folks access and opportunity to develop their passion projects, tell the stories that resonate with audiences actually around the world, and do this in a commercially viable way. And if there's then other companies who say, hey, I love what you guys are doing, love the mission, love the values, and I want to be a part of that, I want to support that, that starts to kind of form that notion of the ecosystem where, we can't do everything ourselves, nor should we think that we can, but it's through kind of the combination of working with other people and the partnerships is how we can actually all succeed together.
Absolutely love that. I love hearing your story from the very beginning there, your origin story and what led you to Creative Plus. But before I let you go, a question I always like to ask my guests is not just to hear about the origin story, but also the soundtrack to that origin story. So I'm going to ask you, is there a particular song that has inspired you, been the soundtrack to your career, or just helps you get your head in the zone before going on stage or landing a big meeting? And I'll let you choose anything but a Blue Chicken song. I'll leave it completely up to you.
I'd say, like, related to Creator Plus, I think last year, like in that early ideation kind of phase, I'll get to the song, but I think like albums that I was actually spending a lot of time kind of listening to Thievery Corporation, Symphonic, Faithless, All Blessed. Yes. Were two albums that came out last year that I think I had on heavy rotation. But I think the song that also probably had like pretty heavy rotation, and when I work, I'm more of a night owl, and so kind of get into a flow late at night. And Fat Freddy's Drop, which is a Kiwi band, track Blackbird, I think is one that it just helps kind of set the move and the mood and the groove, I guess, into that kind of creative ideation process.
Love that. Well, I'll add that to our Spotify playlist so listeners can check that out. But before I let you go, for anyone wanting to find out more about Creator Plus, what's the best way of finding you online and contacting your team? What's the best starting point to find out more information?
So, Creator Plus is at creatorplus.com. I'm personally on LinkedIn, can be contacted directly there. I think broad-based kind of contact for Creator Plus, probably contact us at creatorplus.com.
Well, I'll be following your story very closely. When those films are slated for release, it'd be great to get you back on here and talk about the process throughout this year and getting them out there. But more than anything, just thank you for sitting down, sharing your story and the story behind Creator Plus. I appreciate it.
I appreciate your time as well, Neil. Thank you.
Creators now wield massive reach and engagement, with more than 500 of them exceeding 10 million subscribers and more than 1 billion viewers streaming over an hour of content every single day. However, current streaming options are limited to free, short-form and ad-supported content, or a growing number of subscription-based platforms. And Jonathan Shambroom, CEO and co-founder of Creator Plus, also recently said that they believe that the next generation of storytellers are digital natives, and they don't want to tell stories in short-form bursts, but rather inspire and impact their audience with compelling feature-length films. So I love the project, love their mission, and how they're leveraging technology to create this ecosystem that's fueling the careers for young creatives in front and behind the camera. And of course for Ben for wrapping all that up in a language that everyone can understand. Absolutely love chatting with him. I think it's a great project. I'm going to be following it very closely. But over to you. Please share your thoughts, opinions, insights and similar stories, or your story, by emailing me at techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter @Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So a big thank you as always for tuning in. I'll be back again tomorrow with another guest. But thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.